Hey everyone, you may have heard over the weekend that Kanye had sued a bunch of people, and for various reasons, different reasons, and maybe the most concerning thing to you, this was the article that kind of set everything off, was that Home of Yandhi album up in the air. This article had ended saying, finally document reveals Kanye has not handed over his ninth studio album just yet, titled Yandhi. Ye has teased the album with multiple drop dates, but it appears he may not want it swallowed up with his current contractual obligations, which sent everybody into a tizzy because we've all kind of been anticipating Yandhi for a few months now, and buzz has started to build a bit again. Like, there's expectations it might drop January 30th. From what I've been hearing from various people and information gathering, it seems like the target date might be in this first quarter. So sometime, February, if not the end of January, February, March. So fingers fucking crossed. But the target date for the seventh album after Yeezus was mid 2014. And we all know that it took until February 2016. So who knows? But just to end the suspense right now, if you're wondering, is Yandhi actually going to be held up? The answer's no. That's just simply that. Like, it doesn't seem Yandhi is going to be held up by the lawsuit at all. The initial reporting from the blast was incorrect in that regard. But if you're curious about the lawsuits and what's going on with that, what it could be related to, that's what this video is going to be about. And we're going to do the best job that we can to kind of explain what's going on, why it's going on, and what we can maybe expect from it. So there's a little bit of backstory that's kind of necessary, and that dates back to October in Uganda. You may remember that Kanye went on Twitter and did a live stream called Mind Control. And in this live stream, he talked about a bunch of stuff. He talked about, people telling him what to do and it feeling like somebody's touching his brain and how not good that is. He talked about social media. He talked about being the spirit and carrying the spirit of other artists, that they flow through him. He talked about making music. He talked about his IQ. But one of the major things that came up was his desire to be released from his contract with Sony ATV Music Publishing. And this article goes into some of the details about that. I went to go buy my publishing from Sony ATV, and they said it's $8 million or $9 million. And when I went to buy it, they told me no. How dare they? I couldn't buy my publishing. I have the money to buy back my publishing, and they told me I couldn't buy my publishing. It's like the control. And the control is just kind of the overall, simulation control. People want to tell you what you can do, what you can't do. They want to tell you what you can wear, what you can say. And even with his music, they're telling him what he can or can't owe. And this gets at something that Kanye has kind of been pushing back against, not just in 2018, but, back to New Slaves. And you look at the lyrics of New Slaves, and you can kind of see how maybe some of the relationship dynamics that he shared with the music industry, not just the fashion industry, because a lot of people cite the fashion industry and Kanye's rejection and alienation from the industry standards, not the word, but the known entities in the industry being like, no, fuck you, get out of here. That was kind of what inspired Yeezus. But New Slaves, you can imagine very much being part of kind of the music industry as well. Like, sign this contract, here are these Maybach keys, like, now go make music, and guess what? You're actually fucked, and we're going to take all your money. And they told me that I couldn't buy my publishing. West also referenced the late artist Prince, who famously had a lengthy feud with Warner Brothers in the 1990s because the label wouldn't release his albums as often as he wanted. Prince had written the word slave, on his face during the label fight. I shouldn't make happy-go-lucky noises at the word slave, but just, the connection to New Slaves, right? So this guy, John Platt, took over Sony ATV from Marty Bandier, or Bandier? And Kanye went on to say, Sony ATV told me I couldn't buy my publishing, but I got the money. So Big John, Marty, whoever is involved, I need my publishing. I got the money. I'm not going to say the S word. I'm not Prince. I don't need to write it on my face. How cool would it have been, though, had he just hit play and New Slave started playing at the time, and he's just like sips tea, looks away, maybe gives it 2 or 3 minutes, and then comes back and starts telling us more. That would have been awesome. So it seems that Kanye trying to get his publishing, trying to get his masters has been on his mind for a little while. And you may be wondering why he would want that. So music licensing. There's this nice little article, Christopher Rux, thank you. And he goes on to say, what is a master? So a master recording is the first recording of a song or other sound from which all the later copies are made. Since sound recording was first invented, master recordings, usually just called masters, have been on discs, tapes, and computers. So Chris goes on to say, so at a basic level, a record label owns the master recording. They own the copyright to the actual file, the file which contains the music you want to place in your recordings. Whether you've gotten a hold on an MP3, a CD, vinyl, 8-track, or a 45, the music on each of these mediums is derived from one master recording, and it belongs to the label. So if you want to use the music contained on or within that MP3, yeah, you got to go through them. The other thing is publishing. So the second half of that recording represents the actual musical composition. It's the lyrics, the melodies, the written music, the structure, etc. And the publisher owns or controls this portion of the copyright. So you notice that the artist doesn't necessarily own anything once they're working with a larger label publisher. And sometimes a label and publisher can be one and the same, but oftentimes it's not. So Kanye, has the College Dropout, and he signs this deal, and suddenly it's Def Jam, Rockefeller, Sony, whoever that owns not just the master, but the publishing. And that sucks for Kanye because then he can't do anything with it. And you may have noticed this word show up over and over again, and that this is music licensing 101. And why this is a big deal is whoever has the master and publishing rights has the licensing rights. And you may be aware that we're kind of in a post-CD world, that CDs still are sold, but they're harder and harder to come by, and more music is published digitally. Now, if you're the record label, what's the last thing you want to do? Give up your publishing and give up the master, because at that point you then have no monetary value in the artist, and you're also only making money mostly at this point through the digital aspect of your catalog. So you can sign these artists when they're young, control their publishing, control the masters, and get all of their licensing rights, or a majority of their licensing, for their entire career. And even for somebody at Kanye's level, he's not able to get his licensing back. He has the money to buy back the masters, to buy the publishing, to get it outright, but they don't want to sell it to him because what precedent does that set? If it's Kanye today, who is it tomorrow? And the more artists that start to buy back their own rights, the less money that the record labels get to take from the digital platform. And then those record labels, what do they have to make money then? Either these young artists or just their branding? Like that doesn't get them anything. So if they want to not be totally destroyed by Apple or Spotify, they need to have some sort of leverage over the artists, or some kind of gimmick that they can run. And right now that's the licensing. The moment they lose the licensing and it goes back to the artists or goes to another entity like Apple or Spotify, then the record labels are just fucking done. They're gone. So that's why this fight is kind of a huge one, and it's one that might be a bit more complicated and a bit more, I don't know, not a quick and easy victory for Kanye, potentially, unless a judge is just like, yeah, he's the artist, give him his shit, and rules in his favor. But the problem there, as we just talked about, that could start a landslide for the entire industry. And these record labels have a lot of money that they're going to pour into this legal battle because it's life or death at that point for them. So essentially, Kanye has entered into a lawsuit that could be the precedence for the ending of record labels, at least as we know them, which would be kind of wild if that's what happened. You know, it might not go that far, but at least Kanye is kind of getting the ball rolling with it. You know, he may just end up being a victim of the court system, but if he is able to do this, that would be huge. And that gets back to one of the things with Frank Ocean. We know that Frank released Endless a couple of years back as a way of getting out of his contract. And once he did that, he released Blonde, and he owned Blonde. He no longer had to give up the master or the, what's the word again? Oh my God, publishing to anybody else, which meant that he got a majority of the money. And I think Chance is in the same boat. Chance stayed independent, so was getting more and more of the money, which is why Chance, even being a smaller artist, relative to everybody else, is still making like $20 million because he owns all the rights to everything. There's way more money that's available at that point. Like if Kanye had as much of the slice of the pie as like Frank or Chance, whew, he would have Jesus. So that's what these lawsuits seem to be about. Now, there's a little bit of uncertainty with what was actually going on in the lawsuit. So at first, The Blast, which is a spinoff from TMZ, one of the co-founders of TMZ and a few of the higher-ups there, created The Blast a couple years back. So it's kind of the same level of TMZ. They get the general scoop, and that seems to usually be trustworthy enough, but the details cannot be accurate at all, or maybe they're reporting on like some scummier things, and you're just like, fuck off. But in this case, they at least broke the story and had some of the details right. But they talked about there being 2 lawsuits and being against, Rockefeller and Def Jam and Sony and EMI. So these 4 entities. And that was on the 25th. And it talked about money that was owed Kanye because, you know, essentially they give Kanye money up front, but it acts as a loan. And he has to pay that back through what's earned via his music. And once that's paid back, he then gets more money. So it's essentially just like an advance or a payday loan. So you may remember the line from Cruel Summer when he says, walk into Def Jam like I'm the shit, tell him give me 50 million or I'm a quits. Like that's him saying like, you need to give me 50 million up front right now because I got other shit to do. But that's not just 50 million he's getting. He has to earn that 50 million back, which kind of sucks. And then he's earning it back at a slower rate. Like his music might make 100 million, but for every 100 million, he's only getting like 10, which you can understand why he'd want to be out from that contract. But then they reported the next day that there was a 3rd lawsuit. And this one went more into the details of him wanting to get out of his contract. And they expressed that in the complaint, it said, even if the contracts were not unfair, they are. Even if the terms valued Mr. West's contributions in line with the breathtaking success he has achieved for these companies, they do not. And even if the companies had not unpaid Mr. West what they owe him, they have, he would be entitled to be set free from its bonds. And they went on to say, at no point since the commencement of Mr. West's services under the recording agreement and extensions in 2002 has he enjoyed any moment of freedom. That is, any moment during which he was freed from his obligations under the contract and able to offer his services to anyone else, take a break from his recording career, or even retire from it altogether. How dare you say that? Don't you... I want to hear nobody say that. They also claim Kanye is owed a substantial amount of money. They have unjustly earned millions of dollars by binding Mr. West's recording talents to Island Def Jam for an unlawful term, and then the Yandhi stuff came up. So a representative for Kanye actually released a statement saying the Blast article has the unredacted complaint, but it's not a new lawsuit. It's the unredacted version of the previous filing. Also, there's another inaccurate portion about him holding up the 9th album. That's not in the complaint and untrue. So I think what's being said, I think some interpreted it as this what was said here may not have been true at all, or this lawsuit wasn't false. What's actually being said is that there wasn't a third lawsuit that this content here came from. It's actually that this content was just the unredacted portion from the original lawsuit that was against the 4 parties, which was Rockefeller, Def Jam, EMI, and Sony. So that seems to be more the case. Like, this lawsuit here is actually the same thing as this lawsuit here. It's just they didn't have any information or unredacted portions from this, but when they saw this, they thought it was from something completely different. So yes, I think that's the overview of everything. Yandhi's going to come out. It has nothing to do with any of this. But Kanye is unhappy with his contract, does want out of his contract, and does want the masters and publishing licensing, but he may get out of his contract. I don't know if he's ever going to get the licensing rights that he wants, which is a shame, right? Like, these are his artistic works, and he has no ownership of them, and could never have any ownership of them, and it's just the record label that continues to be the biggest beneficiary of dude's work. Hopefully that's not the case, but let's go Kanye. And this was kind of funny. I don't know if this is what was happening. Like, Dame has been a long time kind of mentor for Kanye, and Kanye goes and talks with him every so often. Kanye helped finance Dame's movie that came out a couple of years back, Honor Up, or For Honor, something like that. So it could be completely unrelated that he went to meet with Dame, just wanted to get Dame's talk or Dame's views on music. But, you know, Dame was the former co-owner, co-CEO of Rockefeller with Jay-Z before they had their whole falling out. So it's kind of funny that after the news of these lawsuits breaks that we see Kanye with Dame. And it could be that he really was getting advice from it, but there's some clips in this video that have nothing to do with the lawsuit. But I'll make a video about those tomorrow. So look forward to that. Oh, I went blurry. Okay, there we go. I think that does it for this video. Real fast, the podcast. We have some new episodes from the last time they made a video. The Nino Blue story is still probably the best interview that we've done in terms of just insight into Kanye. If you're unfamiliar with Nino's story, he had rapped for Kanye outside a Yeezus event a few years back, and then ran into him in 2018 in October when Nino had gone to New York City for an internship, and the internship fell through. And he was living on the streets at that point because he didn't have any money. His roommate got them kicked out of the place that they were living. And he didn't know what to do, and knew Kanye was around and just happened to run into him. And Kanye remembered him. And Nino actually ended up in the studio that day with Kanye and got to work on Yandhi. The story's crazy. He tells it so well. So definitely give that a listen. We also released our lyrical analysis of Get 'Em High, which is a complete narrative and thematic deconstruction, line by line through it. We also show how it connects to the whole portion of the album preceding it, as well as teasing maybe the larger narrative on the College Dropout. So if you've ever wondered, does the College Dropout have a larger narrative? We can at least say that from We Don't Care through Get 'Em High, there's something going on. So if you want to know about that, check that out. If you want to support the channel, the easiest way is just to like and subscribe. That tells YouTube that people are enjoying this, and then YouTube will show it to more people. We get more money per video. Right now, it's like 50 cents to $1 per video, so increasing that would be much appreciated. So if you can do that, that would be great. We're closing in on 2,000 subscribers, so you know, my birthday is February 10th. If we can get there, that'd be a nice birthday present. Otherwise, if you have any content requests, go ahead and leave a comment and I'll get to it. If I don't, just bother me about it and I'll get to it. Hope you're having a nice week, and I'll be back tomorrow with another video. Cheers.